The following organizations have provided funding for this Into the Outdoors television series.
Oh, I see dinner over there.
Oh, okay. I haven't been in a river in a long time. I love kayaking.
Hey, check out this river over here. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. This reminds me of hanging out with my family. Ooh, I hope you guys get some trout.
When you think about it, a river is like an artery that feeds lifeblood to all of the ecosystems that it nourishes along its path.
Makes sense, right?
So what happens to all of the ecosystems and their creatures when one species pinches the flow of that artery for 100 years?
What might happen if that one species decides to reopen the artery?
Well, that's what's happening here on the Boardman River. It's an awakening of sorts.
Back to a time when this river was called the Ottaway.
So grab your gear and join us as we explore
The story of what happened in this river valley and what's still about to happen.
The outdoors. Grab your gear and let's explore as we discover the wild outdoors. Science, discovery, it's what we do. Into the outdoors, now what you waiting for? Into the outdoors, it's fun when we explore. Science, discovery, it's way too cool. You can make our Earth a bright and better place by joining us in this wide open space. Into the outdoors.
Kind of makes you wonder, who were the first people to call this place home?
Winishman P. Gantimayajig.
And we migrated over here maybe 1,200 years ago. So this area is like a Garden of Eden. The Boardman River was our life, really. It gave us food, transportation, all the way to helping with our housing, our living, our foods, everything. The different animals that we could get, the beaver, the furs from them. And so the river itself provided everything that we needed.
Provided us water to drink. It provided us water to take care of our clothing, to bathe in, the moisture for all the trees and the plants that are here, all the animals that come here that we may have used the deer, the rabbit to eat off from. So everything is connected to this water that we used and kept us balanced and helped us survive.
Like most places, European settlers displaced Native Americans and built cities in the best spots, usually at the mouths of rivers.
There wasn't a lot of people here, settlers. But as soon as they started using the Erie Canal, then all of a sudden people from Europe and Finland and all over Ireland were coming directly to Michigan. And so all of a sudden, in the 1850s, there was an explosion of population of people that were here.
Europeans settling into Michigan, they knew what was going on. Native Americans who saw it arrive in their neighborhood simply did not have a clue what they were up against.
And the Indians also never felt that that land was owned by anybody. It was for everybody or the one who possesses it. They don't own that land. It's for their use to maintain a livelihood.
We know and have always followed the rule that we treat everything as our relative. And if you don't, you make that relative suffer. And when we saw the immigrants, the way they behaved with the water even, dirtying the water when they didn't need to, we knew that they were doing this for their gain at the suffering of everything around them. We had to leave, the pressure got so great, people came in and actually chased us away from where we were living. So we had no choice in the matter.
Tribal communities were taken advantage of because they probably couldn't explain the depth and breadth of connection to the natural world that human beings have and should respect and honor. And then we came in and we just walked right over them and dismissed their beliefs, dismissed their teachings because it wasn't written down. It wasn't proven by some scientific method.
To learn about environmental impacts on our rivers, visit intotheoutdoors.org. Don't go away, there's plenty more Into the Outdoors. And now back into the outdoors.
It's cool that there's still some white pines here.
Yeah, they used to stretch as far as the eye could see.
When we were settling the country, you know, it was absolutely critical for us to build the infrastructure. And logging was a major business in Michigan, but there were repercussions of that.
Huge native white pine trees was the predominant wood that they were after. Cut them with two-man hand saws, transporting them and pulling them to rivers, floating them down the rivers, standing on the logs to make sure they didn't jam, and then getting them to a mill to cut.
So from the 1840s through the 60s, every tree within miles, within 100 miles of here, was gone. Absolutely cut, rolled into the river, along with the sediments that came off that barren hillside and floated in a series of explosions down through town so they could cut them up and send them down to Chicago and have them build it a couple times.
You can only imagine what kind of devastation that would have on the actual channel shape, the diversity, the morphology, the hydrology, all those key pieces to good habitat for fish.
Because of that devastation, almost every species in the Boardman River was negatively impacted. And one of the repercussions is the elimination of the grayling population in the Boardman River.
All that life that was destroyed, literally destroyed and murdered in that moment. So it didn't just impact us two-leggeds, it impacted that spirit world. And in our Indian way of life, we are connected to that world. We were put here to learn from that and to take care of it.
Where I come from is called Xinguak Zibing, and Xinguak, it means white pine, and Zibing is the river. So we understand that process of the river. And those are very important to us. And when they came in and they clear-cut our white pine, those are like our buffalo to the Western tribes. They took away our livelihood and who we were. And one of our elders said that the white pine, we have not mourned the loss of our white pine.
We know that the invention of electricity reshaped our lives forever, but it also reshaped the ecological lives of rivers across America, including this one.
1881, Edison invents the light bulb. By 1889, hydro dams are going up all over the country. The only power they had in Traverse City at the time was from coal and wood right downtown. There was one building with electricity at that time.
As our nation developed, there was a need for the hydroelectric. That was one of the methodologies of growing our electricity, which grows our economy and provides services to our citizens.
Back in 1894, when we constructed the first hydro dam,
the dams were new to the Boardman River. Obviously, at that time, it looked like a great thing, a way to generate electricity, and electricity is up and coming.
They saw opportunities to utilize natural resources, and they did.
It was just, let's use the resource however we want to use it. Let's abuse the resource, just like the trees that were cut, to get the maximum benefit, dollar benefit out of it.
And that they brought their values and their perspectives of what they wanted out of life and changed it.
And use does not mean abuse or change. And some of the changes that have come through the Boardman Valley have been abusive. Man using his force. Man, American men.
But we don't understand what it did to the river that was naturally there and the species that did exist there that no longer exist there because When we impounded it, we warmed the water. We changed the composition of the landscape. You can't go forward looking in a rearview mirror, and you have to understand that nobody put those dams in place thinking they were going to have negative, adverse effects on our environment. That didn't happen. The dams were an important part of our region at that time. It was important for the people at that time. We've moved beyond that. We know better now. We have better science in place, and we have a better understanding of our natural environment.
Coming up next, the impacts of dams.
Don't go away, there's more Into the Outdoors. And now back into the outdoors.
Why should you care what happens here?
And what's going to happen?
Any river in the country, in the world, has three main purposes. One is to carry water from upstream to downstream. Two is to carry material from upstream to downstream. And three is to support the life that lives within it. And when you put a dam in, you significantly negatively impact all three of them, primarily number two. And so what you get is this dead zone right downstream of a dam, because the only thing that's transported downstream of a dam is water. And it's not all the other critical components of life that are required for a world-class healthy river system.
So when you pinch off an ecosystem like you've done here, where you've constructed 4 dams, instead of having one large river system, now you've got fragments. Fish have the biggest impact because now you've disconnected populations. You've got genetics that don't refresh themselves, you've got fish that can't pass into certain stretches where maybe they've historically spawned. So it's a big deal when you fragment a river system like that.
We have thousands of lakes in this region. We have one cold water river system that feeds the Grand Traverse Bay. 30% of the water in the bay comes from this river. 193 million gallons a day that feeds into the bay that everyone loves and cherishes comes through this river system. We have one cold water river system that feeds the Grand Traverse Bay. The quality of the water in this system is paramount to the quality of the water in our bay.
The license for Brown Bridge Dam was set to expire. And in order to generate hydropower, you have to have a license.
If you're the owner of a dam, you're required to comply with the dam safety regulations. Engineering studies were done, and it was discovered that these 3 hydropower producing facilities didn't have adequate spillway for the current regulations. And so in order to add that additional spillway capacity, they were looking at multi-million-dollar projects. And the reason these dams don't produce electricity any longer is that it basically became uneconomical. The hydroelectric potential is the product of the amount of flow in the river and the height of the dams. These dams did not produce enough energy to power Traverse City. These facilities were about 1 megawatt apiece. That's 10,100 watt light bulbs. And our job is to have safe dams. And a big part of that dam safety is making sure that you have enough spillway so that when the flood comes, it goes around, over, or through the dam safely and doesn't cause the dam to fail. You've got a structure here that's 50 or 60 feet tall, impounding 80 or 90 acres of water upstream of a highly populated area. We've seen a number of extreme storm and flood events just over the past few years. If we had 20 inches of rain in a 24-hour period here on the Boardman River system, it's likely that every one of these dams would fail and starts heading into Boardman Lake and downstream into Traverse City.
So thousands of folks, hundreds of hours in meetings got together and looked at 84 different options and decided on this system the best thing to do was remove 3 of the dams, and modify the 4th.
And I think that the environmental aspects of the Boardman had a voice through all of the environmental experts that participated in the project. And it had a voice above and beyond the environmental aspects. It had a voice that also incorporated human uses, so the social uses, the recreational aspects, the tourism aspects, and in order to sustain not only the environmental aspects of the Boardman River into the future, but also serve as an environmental foundation to sustain and enhance the economic prosperity of the region.
There's going to be a flood. We backed the car into the driveway, we took a few values.
Stay with us. Something unexpected is about to happen.
We were ready to make a run for it.
To study dam removal challenges in your classroom, visit intotheoutdoors.org.
Don't go away. There's more Into the Outdoors. And now back into the outdoors.
We had the pond drawn down 13 feet and had another 20 feet to go.
When you are working in a natural environment, there are things that you just absolutely cannot plan for.
But here's a geyser coming out of the center of the dewatering structure, and I'm like, this isn't good. That geyser soon became a roaring river within minutes. I took boulders 2 to 3 feet in diameter and just knocked them together and threw them around like pool balls.
2 minutes after we saw the initial rush of water, we called 911, kicked in the emergency services, and it was like absolute bedlam for the next 12 hours.
So he called us and told us that there's going to be a flood. We backed the car into the driveway, we took a few valuables that we have and put them all in the car, and we were ready to make a run for it. The river just started going up, and I mean, you could see it going up. It never quite got up to the house. I don't think most people have the appreciation for the power of the river.
There were trucks hauling in large stone to drop in the river to try to slow up that energy. That happened for 5 or 6 hours during the day. At some point in the mid-afternoon, things were under control again. And what happened, it took about 12 hours for the water to work its way underneath the watering structure and out. So we had a rapid release, but not a catastrophic failure. We released what was supposed to be released in 20 days in about 6 hours. It raised the elevation of the water about 5.5 feet through the whole system. It flooded some homes, it damaged some property. It was very disappointing to the whole design team and all of us watching it happen, but no one got hurt.
I wonder what it takes to restore a river.
Can it even really be restored?
I believe that you can have a rebirth, or a river can be reborn. So when you look at it from the human perspective, if the blood in your veins isn't free to run, how it hurts your body physically. And so when you can make that same connection to the river, that for many years the river's vein was clogged and now it's free, and how much healthier life and all of the plants and animals that will benefit greatly from the river being able to run freely again.
And maybe it will take a long time to heal, but everything starts with that first step as you go through life. That's what we try to teach our children, that's what we try to teach our community. You need to recover and come back to the way that was given to you, the understanding of your path in life.
To restore the basic fundamental function of that Boardman River that makes it so unique and makes it such a world-class fishery, yes, that is doable. And that is what is being done through this Boardman Dams project. We are restoring those basic functions, the functions of moving material down the river, the functions of providing real cold, clean water to these species that are so revered throughout the state and throughout the country, such as the brook trout. Those basic fundamental functions of the river can definitely be restored, and they are being restored through this process.
Since the pond is no longer here, we're here with a unity group from the Grand Traverse Band, Ottawa and Chippewa Indians, And the youth are in here planting right now today 100 gijik, which is cedar. Putting in the cedar here will help to replenish what used to be here. This is what made this such a healthy environment was the cedars that walked right up to the edge of the river all the way down through this watershed. I believe it's important to get the youth involved in the restoration because when you're actually planting a tree, that brings you into a connection with Mother Earth by planting that. Then you start to realize as a native youth your responsibility towards our mother and that you can have an ability to help improve things around here.
Within 2 years at Brown Bridge, I can take virtually anybody that was against the project because they were looking at a black, stump-strewn field, essentially, and now see this emerald green, vigorous valley. And they'll remark commonly how quickly that came back.
The rebirth of a river happens one step at a time. Let's see if it's working.
As part of the project, we have to monitor and evaluate the impacts or the changes in the river and the biological community in particular to understand what kind of positive impacts that dam removal and habitat restoration might have. So this university offered the services of students to help us collect fishery data. So we were looking at the species composition, their growth, their abundance, and as it changes through time.
Brown trout.
By doing that every year, before and after the restoration actions occur, we start to understand how much and how significant the change is, whether it's positive or negative. What we expect and what we are indeed seeing is a positive change in the fish community.
Fisheries. This is a brook trout.
Brown trout are not native to this region. Brook trout are. And typically we see smaller numbers of brook trout in these larger portions of the river and more brown trout. However, we're seeing an actual equalization of those two populations. And the fact that we see more brook trout abundance compared to brown trout is a positive thing because that species requires very high water quality.
More so what we're seeing is fish in a piece of a river that there haven't been fish in a long time. So really what's important is to have people out here saying, yeah, this river is coming back strong and it's coming back fast.
We look ahead to 7 generations. We make decisions based on not today, but based on the impact they'll have in the future. When you think like that, and you remember that you have to honor 7 generations ago because somebody thought of you that far ahead, it gives you a different perspective. And looking at the Boardman River Dam's restoration project and doing what's best for this river and our environment, and you really truly believe inside of your heart that you have to make decisions today that are going to be the best for the future 7 generations, and you have to carry yourself and show honor to where you are in the here and now because somebody thought of you, it's not an insurmountable goal. You can do that.
The following organizations have provided funding for this Into the Outdoors television series.